Okay. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters, and also thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, for speech, or for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of all of you today. My name is Nathan McCully, and I am a current student over at Mission College in Santa Clara, California. When I told my aunt and uncle that I would be attending Mission College, they asked me, "Where are the Fox hat?"
Get it? Fox hat? Never mind.
But anyways, all seriousness, at the end of the semester I was left with a bunch of musical instruments that I didn't really know what to do with. And part of my speech is to piggyback on what Mark had mentioned about musical instruments. This is a good little tie-in. So we all know that, some of us have, in my particular case, I have access to a drum that I've made for my English 1 class, as you can see here. Other things I have access to include little ukulele here from Hawaii, and also straight from Australia we have what's called a didgeridoo. So I hope you can hear that. But with all of these three things set aside, sometimes we don't really have access to, or some people don't, like me, I don't really have access to good quality musical instruments, like guitars or ukuleles. I happen to have one here. So instead, that forces me to think creatively, thinking outside of the box. And this is where improvisation comes in, and being able to use different items from throughout the house. As can be seen with I can turn a very simple tablecloth roll into a didgeridoo, like so.
Wow.
Even works better than the original. Other things, obviously, can take a couple pots that I'm sure each of you have in your house. So by being able to take a couple pots using that are made out of different materials, you can create different sounds and different techniques with that. And I'm sure that some of you probably have wine glasses. I'm not sure if you can see that here, and I'm sure you've actually tried this before, but you take a little wine glass, fill it up halfway, dip your finger in there, and rub your finger along the tip. That may be a little difficult to hear.
Wow.
In order to create a very sweet sound out of that. And also, speaking of wine glasses, you may even have a wine bottle that you can also substitute or that you can use as improv for a whistle, if you prefer. Like so. So what all of this really shows is that you don't need to have fancy drums or guitars or didgeridoos in order to create great sounding music. You can just take your already existing items that you have in your household in order to serve the exact same purpose. And now, without further ado, as part of my speech, I had asked Mark if we could have each of you gather individual household items, and I would like for you to join me in a sort of orchestra right now, whatever time I still have. Please join me in playing your little musical instruments. In 3. Okay. 3, 2, and 1, begin. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This has been my icebreaker speech. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Nathan. That was wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so what I want to say, what I want to comment about Nathan's performance just now, his speech just now. He actually used a lot of prop and made the speech very interesting. So he wasn't just standing there. It was like a show and tell. He was going through his different instruments and showing us how, each one can be used to create sound. And if you think back to the early days, to the early humans, when you don't have these fancy instruments, you have to be creative. And that was really creative, Nathan. That was very creative. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Okay, so we'll come back to your evaluation later.
Okay.
Now let's go up to speaker number 2.
Very good.